scheduled meeting of the Board of Trustees. We'd like to welcome everyone here tonight. Also like to ask if you'd like to address the board and you're not on an agenda item, there's a sign-up sheet over here behind Rena. If you could, please sign up, and we'll do that here in a couple minutes. The board does reserve the right to call this meeting into a short recess if deemed necessary. The board will also be going into closed session tonight under government section, chapter 551, section 071, 074, and 072. We'll go ahead and have the first item on the agenda at this time. It's agenda item number 2, and that's public comment per board policy. No one signed up? Next item on the agenda is previous board minutes, and you had that in your board packet. Hopefully you had a chance to look at that. At this time, if there's any changes that need to be made or anything that needs to be taken off or added, we can do that at this time, or if not, I will entertain a motion. Motion made by Terry to go with them as presented. Here a second. Second by Maury. All those in favor? Motion passes unanimously. Next item on the agenda is the financial report of the Stockdale ISD bills, and turn it over to Becky.
Okay, we'll start with our cash position. Our general operating and money market account ended the month of June at $277,000. Our interest in sinking account is at $702,000, and our tax pool account is at $351,000. The cash flow position projection, and look at the month of June. I apologize, it's hard to read because it came out a little blurry. Revenues for the month, $552,000. Expenditures, $687,000, and $520,000 of that was payroll. That ended the month with $277,000. Our debt service fund, we had revenues, which are mostly tax collections, $18,270, and no payments. No, that's just debt payments, nothing that month. Any questions on the cash? The next, I'll keep moving, otherwise y'all stop me if you have any questions. Revenues, expenditures by the object code and function. This is our general fund for the month. By function, the next page on the back will be separated by fund. Different fund codes, that's all our federal funds and all of our revenue and expenditure codes. The next is our tax collection report for the month of June, and the check was $60,917 for our, not much this time of year. Okay, our investment report, quarterly, we just do that quarterly. We have nothing to invest really. It's our interest earnings. Our money market earned $615,000 for the $615 for the quarter. The interest in sinking $850, and tax bill was $974. That's our quarterly earnings on interest. That's the financial reports other than the bills.
All right, there's a copy of the bills in your packet if there's any questions. If there isn't any questions, do you have something else on financial? All right, if there isn't any questions on the bills, if you run into one, we can come back to that later. We'll go to agenda item number 6, and that's our agenda item number 5. Presentation and recommendations from the Safety and Security Committee.
So as y'all may recall, back in early May, we had talked about the need to really look at safety and security as a district. I know it's been a hot button topic. A lot of the individuals here this evening are actually served on the committee, gave input. I wanted to walk through briefly what the community saw, and then of course we took it a step further, and our main priority was to try to give a prioritized list to the board so that as we walk through and implement things, then there's no question as to what would they rather see happen, or It's just top-down, prioritized in terms, along with a dollar amount associated, because we do know that funds oftentimes drive how quickly something can be implemented. So, of course, we had our community members sign in.
If anyone else would like to move their chair out here, feel free to.
You can see better,
Yes.
move around, whatever you want to be.
But we started off by telling the community, these items that we posted in this boardroom that are very important to our district, we do believe that communication brings about harmony between school and community. A community and school operates to its potential with common goals. All children deserve equity, respect, caring, dignity, and quality role models. Family values are important and are reinforced by school and community. The school and community are partners in educating children, and our school district provides the best education when board members and staff are proactive rather than reactive. And it's exciting for me because this in itself is actually a proactive attempt at safety and security, trying to say holistically, what does our district need, and where do we go from here to try to achieve that. So our purpose. The purpose of this committee was to review the current district plans for safety and security, identify opportunities, and to make prioritized recommendations to the school board to be considered for future implementation. Our path along this journey of this committee, we had 4 meetings starting in May 8th. We did a facility walk of the entire district, elementary, junior high, you name it. I think the only one we didn't go into was probably the gym, because I think everybody was well versed about what the gym is, what challenges exist there. June 5th, we actually reviewed the current district emergency operations plan. We did identify some opportunities, and so we took the opportunity by the horns here to say, hey, we are struggling and having a plan for relocation and reunification of students in a true emergency. So things that came up in conversation included, do we know how many buses it would truly take to relocate our entire elementary campus, and how much time is it going to take? What district resources are required? So in our actual plan, it just said under development. So we took the time during that meeting to really hone in and say, hey, in a true emergency, relocation and reunification are the 2 major components that will help eliminate a lot of chaos when trying to move 800 plus kids from one location to another. And we also discussed a lot about, well, sort of what if scenarios. If something's going on at the high school and we're able to vacate or evacuate the junior high to get them out of harm's way, how many buses does that take? How quickly can we get them relocated? So that actually parlayed into our next conversation about, well, if we have a plan and we don't exercise or execute that plan regularly, is it really a plan? So that conversation came up, and they brought up some great things. And there's a lot of things that are free to the district that my hat's off to y'all, because these are things that I think needed to be looked at, and I think had an opportunity to get looked at. And it's going to change how we do some things and how we plan, and it costs the district nothing. It's just a matter of executing the appropriate trainings, and there are a few things on this list that we have executed. So we'll walk through that. June 19th, we did a town hall meeting. I had a small group of folks turn out, whether it be conflict, I know summer, there could have been a lot of people out of town, but we did glean some information from that as well. June 26th, we shared the findings from our strategy investigations. We had our tech director, as a lot of things are going technology driven, we had our tech director on the back end helping us price things to make sure that if we incorporate technology, will it be compatible with what we actually do now, or is it going to require an entire new infrastructure to try to support it? And so his behind the scenes has helped us develop a lot of these pricing structures that you're going to see here shortly. And then of course, we develop the recommendations and select presenters. And while the committee was eager to participate, they felt like having one unified voice would be effective, and then they are more than happy to answer any questions that y'all might have towards the end, because this topic is one that will require some form of funds at some point to get implemented, and it is something that could have a large impact on how we move forward in our planning processes for emergency operations. So recommended strategies in the prioritized list format. The first one was a part-time school resource officer, which I have in parentheses there, already achieved. And so what we've essentially done at the last board meeting, we took action. We actually named our school resource officer, who's also 3 to 4 periods a day going to be offering classes in CTE for Law Enforcement 1 and criminal investigations. But the other 3 to 4 periods, depending on how the master's schedule rattles out, they're going to be visible, vigilant, and offer support. The city of Stockdale has been so gracious to say that in order for a peace officer to have jurisdiction, they have to be commissioned. And so the city of Stockdale has been awesome in terms of they're willing to commission this person as a law enforcement official so that they have full jurisdiction inside the city of Stockdale. So it's going to allow that person to carry their handgun with or without any guardian plan. That person has full rights to exercise as a peace officer as is. And so the city of Stockdale was, definitely saw the benefit in having that as a resource. And I always believe if we pull our resources, we're going to get a better end result for not only kids, but also for the community. The second one was a universal communication system to include single touch activation. And I think the key thing here is it's not always an active shooter. What I was proud of this committee is that they quickly identified that emergencies just aren't somebody with a gun. In fact, the majority of the time, the emergency may not involve a firearm at all. It may be the weather or many other different facets that cause concern. And so that was exciting. The price point to that is $14,500 year one, and then a recurring cost of $4,500 to sort of re-up. What this communication system essentially does is, in a true emergency, what's the one thing nobody forgets? It's going to be your phone. You're going to be able to get to the outside world. It's actually app driven and it's ran off the cloud, so even in the event that, it's not like we're going back to network, right? Our district networking, if it was tied to that, if we lost communications, we'd lose everything inside of that app. What this truly, the benefit of this, in my opinion, is that any teacher that saw a concern, it's a one-touch activation. This teacher could shut down and lock down our district, and then it immediately notifies all the administrators and those that need to be known of what the lockdown is about. So it gives every individual the power to make that call. And we've already determined as a committee that we're a small enough district that if one campus locks down, let's all lock down. And we bring that about because with having one campus react to something and not the other sometimes causes confusion with parents about, well, who's in lockdown, who's not in lockdown, and it sort of ties up resources here locally as trying to figure out, okay, which campus is locked down, which one's not, where we'll just do all or none. We're in close enough proximity that I feel like if one locks down, we all should. So I appreciate the committee bringing that to my attention because minutes are crucial in an emergency. So the next component is guardian plan, and that's arming designated staff members. That was number 3. I know that while yes, there's a part-time school resource officer, there was the communication of signage being a deterrent. There was also communication heavily surrounding, what it's one person. What happens if they're not here on that given day? It's sometimes like covering your eyes and trying to hit a dartboard with a dart. Will that person be here and be in the right place at the right time when and if an emergency happens? Well, we're human, and so we need to expect that they're going to have to be trained some days. They're going to have to be out some days. I mean, that's the reality of what we're dealing with. So in our committee, we were discussing how the guardian plan could supplement and benefit that part-time school resource officer. With that person being a licensed peace officer, they also hold many certifications, and they're actually instructors, like firearm instructor, mental health officer. There's a lot of different TCOL things through the state that they're able to actually instruct. So there could be a lot of benefit and savings to the district in that if this person were to prepare possible armed individuals or monitor their progress, their training, and so on. So that was number 3. I used $30,000 only because I'm not sure. I tied it to the school marshal model. That's where each individual would have to go to the state. They'd actually become a TCOL school marshal. And that's sort of, It depends on what requirements that the board deems necessary if the guardian plan were to be enacted, what requirements. So that's sort of a placeholder as if it were school marshal, because I haven't seen anything that's more stringent than that yet. So that's a pretty conservative dollar amount. Number 4, access control system, buzz-in with camera access to confirm visitors. So what we also identified is a lot of districts will do vestibules where you go in the main door and then you get buzzed into the second set of doors, much like at the elementary school. But in our conversations, the strongest door that a building has is their exterior door. And so we were talking about actually putting the buzzers on the exterior doors where there's a camera. They can actually check in and see who you are prior to even gaining access to the facility. Would be the safest bet. That's been the best practice that was researched. But this system would allow for that. There's a lot of different variations. The ballpark figure is $125,000. That was assuming we do every single door, every exterior door. And there are some options to try to curb expenses there. An example would be, do both of them need buzzers, or can we lock one out and just make it to where one is buzz access entry? There are different options that exist, but I wanted to do sort of worst case scenario as if we were to do every component. And then number 5, additional indoor outdoor cameras district-wide, and that would be in strategic locations. I know during the summer, I know in our city, we've had some issues with, I guess, vandalism or mischief, I would call it. And I think by strategically placing cameras, you know, we frequently, every summer that I've been around, that'd be 2, have had kids up on rooftops, you know, here at the school. And then it just leads to other items. A lot of times they're looking to gain access to the building, and when they can't, they go on to the next facility, and when they can't get access, they'll go into a home or whatever is close by. So additional indoor outdoor cameras. The cameras nowadays can actually recognize the frequency of a gunshot and actually notify somebody here in the district. The other benefit to these cameras is we actually can send a live link to law enforcement, and all they gotta do is put the link in a browser and they have access to what we see. So it's a pretty neat deal, even if it's used for the local law enforcement, but also sometimes they're 20 minutes out. You know, they could be logging in and seeing actively what's happening. So there's some huge benefits there. $35,000, that's for installation, hardware, software to run it, etc. Total cost implication is $224,500, assuming just as you see it, if we exhausted it as you see it. With recurring costs, approximately $7,000 to $10,000 per year after implementation. I know the main focus in there was about sustainability. We don't, as a committee, it was very evident, we don't want to put something in there for 1 year and then it disappear. The whole mindset would be is, can it be sustainable so that we can provide safety on an ongoing basis to the kids here in the district. So I guess at this point, I was going to open it up and sort of put the committee on the hot seat on, is there any questions or anything that might be lingering that either didn't get touched on, or if you want more information on, or just to hear from the community and their involvement in the process?
I want to point out to everyone that, you know, part of the committee, whenever we were discussing all this, our main concern is, you know, what the average response time is for police officers or whatnot to get to a school whenever there is an event. And the importance of having something like this, because it's going to happen so fast before somebody can finally get to it. That's where it's extremely lucky. And so that's one of our main concerns.
Any other input from any of the other members of the committee, or any questions?
On the first one, with the officer, is he gonna be using his own vehicle? Is he gonna drive around the campus, or is he gonna be walking the campus?
Actually, he came in, the person that was recommended actually came in to fill out paperwork today, and he had some great ideas. That we did have the conversation about a vehicle, that it'd be great to have one and all of this stuff. In fact, there's a grant that opens up, but it's not until March. A grant that opens up that I would like to write something towards getting a district vehicle. And then I also shared the concern with the city, and the city marshal is working on securing a second vehicle. And if they're able to, they feel that it's important enough to have presence at the school that they may allow that second vehicle to be here and be used by the school resource officer. Because keep in mind, outside the regular school day, being commissioned through the city, they actually could utilize him as a peace officer when the city needs them as well. So it could be extra duty pay, stuff like that for this individual. He actually brought up a bicycle in the meantime.
Oh, gosh.
He's like, if you're comfortable, I can get from A to B on a bicycle much faster than on foot, and I'm more than willing to do that. So it's actually a pretty good compromise, and I didn't even think about a
That's good that he's
bicycle.
willing to do that, at least, comes in with that
Was the
attitude.
board briefed about the, like, gates and that kind of thing that we talked about?
Gates being,
And by the ag shop in front of the high school down to
I believe
closing that street
at
off?
the previous board meeting,
Okay.
we talked about going to city council about blockading 6th Street during the hours of 8 to 3:30. They have been.
Well, and I just think with a bicycle, he would be able to, he wouldn't hit traffic there, he wouldn't be having to worry about
Right.
getting a car through there, so it would be pretty instantaneous that he could be at the elementary, or vice versa.
Is that something we're gonna be doing, or is that something the city will handle as far as shutting down?
And no, it'll be on us, and so we've gone to them and just asked for the permission to do so. And we'll probably start in August with a temporary barrier, whether it be cones or something that we makeshift just to blockade the road for the meantime. But the welding students will actually be designing and developing gates that are on rollers, that'll be a bit more permanent. The city did recommend that we ensure that they can lock in the open position, so that outside of school hours, they can't easily be shut to block a street in the middle of the night or something like that. So it would be something, but I think that can be incorporated in the supplies and stuff of our welding team now.
So what's the next step? I mean, we have the first one in progress now. How soon do you feel the next one? Are they in the order of preference? And
So they
order
are.
of-
So-
Okay.
So this is in the prioritized list, and the committee really weighed in on, well, if you can't communicate well in an emergency, all the rest sort of falls by the wayside. And I agree with that completely. I think the next step is just, tonight was more of an informational, get us a list as a board to be able to drive decision-making in the future moving forward. I know that some of them may hinge on funds being available or allocated, or I know we just passed our budget for this year. We'll have to look at, like I said at the town hall meeting, creative ways to try to fund this. I know,
Has that been
I
discussed
started-
any further?
well, here's the thing, I started a grant, I got about knee-deep in the grant. In fact, the committee didn't even know about this yet, but it's for $150,000. The district would just have to come up with 50. I get about knee-deep in it, get all the approval things to get the application started. And then it didn't really tell you what all it covered outside of school safety. I got into it, and it's really focused on mental health assessments, training for mental health, prevention using mental health strategies. So really, it disqualified equipment altogether. I spoke to the superintendent in Poth today, led me on to another lead on another grant opportunity, contacted them to get the number, come to find out you can't do it as a district, you have to be a sub-applicant. You have to either tack on to a tribe or municipality, so it's something that the city would have to take on. But they're actually, the event parking over here, they're actually already started in a grant process, partnered with the district to try to get that event parking paved and water runoff studies and all of that. So I know they don't have the resources to try to do that now. So the ball that's being tossed around right now, I know the committee brought up possible desires to fundraise. They do feel like the community would support it. It really hadn't been brought up or talked much about. I was going to talk to you all more about that at a later date or in closed session regarding safety, security stuff. Just want to make sure that, I think the worry I have is the message. Safety and security is very important to our board, I know, and I know important to our district, but if the community is willing to help, I just want to make sure that if our name's tied to it, we market it in a way that's appropriate and not just trying to get every dollar from everything. So I think the other items, talking to Becky, is we'd really want to involve our financial advisor about that, and I guess our auditor, to ensure that what fundraising we're doing is legal and appropriate and so on. So,
But the
That's
fundraising
one
for the purpose
conversation.
of the video cameras and the doors and the buzzers, correct, and
right.
that type?
Yeah, so that's what they were talking about, is trying to, like I told the committee, no matter what happens, we're gonna continue to try to work through this list in the prioritized order that it's in. Now, there is some stuff like the Guardian Plan. I was on the phone with the attorney today talking about, we can modify policy to allow Guardian Plan to give ourselves a year where we wouldn't see a cost implication immediately, being that we're in July and school starts in August. There's different ways to do that, and I actually have a draft to talk more in detail a little later. But we did talk about going down that list as best as we can to try to incorporate it somehow, some way. So the communication one at 14.5, so here's the uniqueness is, in our budget, like y'all know, sometimes things will come in under budget. At the end of the year, sometimes we're looking at things going, hey, is this something we can afford with funds that didn't get utilized? That's an option, but it's almost a year down the road. I know at the town hall meeting, possible bond got discussed, like could this be a selling point to a bond, possibly in the near future, that would help drive that, because we have other needs too in other areas outside of just safety, but could this be a way to incorporate and get community support for a possible bond? So those have been ways. My game plan is continue to look for grants. Really on the M&O side, I don't see a time warrant after looking at it more closely being something that the M&O side that we could handle. I don't know that we could support it with our revenue versus expenditure, so.
To you, Mr. Fuller, on the Guardian Plan, that would come up with a lot of discussion from the board.
There would be a ton,
Ton
yeah.
of discussion on your guys'
In-
part on
in fact,
implementing and.
I have a packet from our attorneys, it's about 22 pages of considerations, et cetera. I got this emailed to me this morning, just to talk about different best practices, to talk about here are things to consider if it's something we wanted to do or move forward on. But in talking to the attorney, the Guardian Plan, in essence, with a year waiver to determine how to move forward, it could be something that by next board meeting, we could modify policy and it be going.
So
Without
what is the
necessarily-
feelings of the committee on that,
In terms of,
on the Guardian Plan?
We were in support of it. We looked at the school marshal plan versus the guardian plan and felt that this was the best plan for the district, and it would be a lot less cost. And in the future with the state, you never know where their fees are gonna be set at. That also gives the board the power to determine what things you wanna implement on who can carry, how they carry, where they carry, and the power goes to the board for you to make the decisions. We just said that we would like it kind of mirrored to that school marshal program, just because I think it prevented any issues and it had a lot of the best practices already in place. But cost effectiveness, the Guardian Plan we thought was the best bet for us.
How many, were y'all projecting like 1 to 2 per campus, or did y'all go
It depends on, the amount of students.
students? Okay.
Yeah, the ratio.
yeah,
Well, that was the school.
that was the school marshal. The
Okay.
Guardian Plan is
Would be up to
truly
you.
at the discretion of the
Whatever we
board.
want to.
And that also, you would choose whether you wanted it locked in a box in strategic locations in the school where only specific teachers had access to the codes to get into that box, whether they had it just in their classroom, whether they had it on them, which I don't think that all comes back to you on what you want it to look like.
Yeah, I can tell you the two surrounding districts that have taken action on Guardian Plan, that being Nixon and being Poth, they both have taken action to actually have it on them. Now, I think between the two, it's, do they have one in the chamber, do they not have one in the chamber? That's more of the conversation.
And that was the big concern of the committee was, do they have them on them during the school day? Do they lock them away? Because, at the elementary, that's something that's not wanted at the elementary for them to be packing guns with them. The junior high, that's a little scary, high school, a little scary, so it's something that, was a little worrisome, just making sure that they are locked away if used and
And I think that came with some comfort in having a school resource officer. It's actually a licensed peace officer that they be carrying. I mean, that's within their
Yes.
jurisdiction to do so. And so sometimes we talked about the visibility being a deterrent and being visible and vigilant, not only with kids, but also with parents, as parents come up. I know, Ms. Docker, you've talked about sometimes your concern more is with upset parents
Yeah.
is more likely to be an issue than
An
a
outsider.
student in your situation or an outsider. So I think that person, it's a balance. I think they'll have to work in unison. I do think that if the Guardian plan is something that we move forward with, will take a ton of planning. I even, in talking to the attorney, I let them know that we were doing a part-time school resource officer, and their suggestion